Mark, good to see you again. Give me your top lines on what we should think about how yesterday went.
Well, a lot of people are going to say, oh, blue states, we didn't expect to win those, and so it doesn't mean anything. And I think nothing could be further from the truth, because I look at the Republican Party and I see a party in absolute disarray right now. They're on the internet fighting Nick Fuentes while the government shut down, and they're doing nothing, and they don't have any plan. And Donald Trump is now calling the senators to breakfast so he can berate them about how they won't use the nuclear option, which I've been calling for since all the way back in February, and which, quite frankly, I don't think they even can do. So it looks like a complete and utter mess. And what did we actually see at the ballot box yesterday? Well, in places like New Jersey, Jack Ciattarelli did expand upon his 2021 vote turnout, but it was nothing like just 2024, just a year ago, when Donald Trump flooded the polls with a whole lot of crossover Democrats and independents. So again, I look at what Trump's doing and I say, you know what? I think he's trying to deliver on his agenda. It's a little scattershot. It's a little chaotic, but I look at the Republican Party, who swore that they would back him up and deliver on the MAGA agenda that had been given a mandate. And they're just MIA. They're just completely outclassed by Democrats. They have absolutely no path forward. There's no unity. They're a mess. Right, I wonder if they even have 40 votes for the filibuster overriding in the Senate. I wonder even if that.
I want to get to that in a second because that's fascinating. But I do want to start with New Jersey. So the takeaway is, I want you to walk me through this. Ciattarelli came within 3 last time, but this time he got more votes, just a smaller margin, correct?
He got, I haven't seen the final vote count, but I hear he expanded on he got 1.3 million in 2021. I think he's going to be in the 1.4, 1.5 range. Donald Trump got 2 million back just a year ago. So you look and people have said, well, Jack Ciattarelli is a good candidate. He's outperforming Trump in his state. Well, yeah, in an off-cycle election. But the problem is that Trump is back in office now, and that makes a lot of people want to resist Trump. And those people turned out to the polls. And in New Jersey, Trump benefited from a lot of crossover Democrat and independent votes. Those people didn't turn out. And Trump has been hemorrhaging independent support as far back as basically right after the One Big Beautiful Bill. I called this out and everybody called me a doomer. They said I was undermining the movement. And I said, no, people don't believe you about the Epstein case. You got to fix this. And they didn't, and it didn't go away. And now they're doing the same thing with the government shutdown. They literally handed the Democrats a government shutdown during an election where, again, is it critical wins for Republicans? No. But they certainly didn't cement the narrative that the country is moving to the right. And I'm here to rain on that parade. The country is not moving to the right. Ubiquitously on almost every issue, the Overton window is moving left because the radical wing of the Democrat Party has taken over, and they've made all of these things ubiquitous. Even the LGBT stuff, believe it or not, the Republicans are losing ground on this. And then they like to pat themselves on the back and say, well, look at the Zoomers. They're so much more right wing than any other generation before them. It's like, well, no, not really. Like, they voted for Trump, but they would vote for a socialist next. They're super socialistic, even the Trump voters, on all these questions we ask. And really what they want to do is burn the system down. And overwhelmingly, all voters said that they wanted massive change in Washington, D.C. by like a 75 to 20 point margin instead of business as usual. And I'm sorry, like, they're nice people, but the Republicans are delivering America business as usual. This idea that like traditional conservative values are going to sell to a generation that had their future stolen from them is not going to work. Like, they don't want to hear the boomer argument. You got to pull yourself up from the bootstraps. They're going to rebel against that, just like they're rebelling against people like Mark Levin right now that are trying to clutch pearls about, quite frankly, what I think is, edgelord behavior on an internet culture, which most people don't even understand the internet culture and leadership. So that's where we're at. I think it's a tough situation, and I don't see a way for the Republican Party to get out of it with the current paradigm.
All right, guys, I hate to interrupt this conversation, but if you're loving the Sean Spicer Show, maybe you want something to snack on, join me in getting a great snack in Masa Chips. These things are unbelievable. No seed oils, just 3 ingredients. And I'm telling you, they've got a ton of great flavors. Original, blue, lime, habanero. Oh, it's amazing. Every one of them is great. You can dip them. They're amazing. Go to masachips.com/Sean, S-E-A-N, masachips.com/Sean. Use code word Sean, spelled the right way, S-E-A-N, to get 25% off. All right, back to this great conversation. And remember, if you're watching the Sean Spicer Show, the official chip, masachips.com/Sean, code word Sean. All right, so 2 questions. One, was there anything that Jack Ciattarelli could have done to win? And two, when you say that, explain what you think is happening with the party. Who and what needs to lead that? Is this a Trump thing that he needs to lead out? Is this a Mike Johnson, John Thune thing? Like, who is the one that could say, I heard Mark Mitchell, I get it, I agree with him, and we need to move forward? Who is that person? Because to me, it seems like the only one is Trump. But like, take those in order, if you will. Is there anything that Ciattarelli could have done differently to win, or was the die cast on that?
It's a blue state. And he ran a pretty good campaign. I think he was a better candidate than Mikey Sherrill in many ways. But a blue state wants blue state things, and they don't see the issues the same way as us. And it's a problem. Like, no, I don't think Republicans could have won. They could have done better. But also at the same time, I hear a lot of stories, and I've polled for states. I've polled for bluish states like Minnesota and Colorado. And what I hear from MAGA candidates out there is, well, my establishment Republican is completely MIA. They have no idea. They basically just run from Democrats all day and try not to get painted as racists. And I think I could do good as a MAGA candidate. And the polling shows, yes, people want a MAGA candidate more than a traditional Republican. But then they say, well, I can't get through to the administration. Nobody's going to give me money. I don't know how to run. Like, how do I message? Where's all my support? And there is none. And so the question I would ask, like, I'd throw it back to you, is that if some miraculous trillionaire who actually wanted to use their money for the voters and not for their own special interests, I know that that's strange, and they said, well, I want to give $1 billion to try to save America, like, who would they even give that to? And I don't think we have an answer to that. You could give it to the Trump campaign, but he's not running again. Right. You could give it to the RNC, and it's going to get siphoned off into like consulting bucks. You could give it to the NRSC, and it's going to be used as like leverage over people in order to get establishment candidates to run for big business interests so that we can have more H-1Bs. Like, I really don't know. Where would you give that money? Like, the candidate themselves, and they'd have a lot of money, but then they would still have the establishment vendors who are like, oh, you got to spend it this way and you got to run this way. And it's not the fingers on the pulse of America. America is getting a very weird mix of violent, nihilistic, and mad. And especially the young people, I don't know where it's going to go, but I've been calling it burn it down politics. And everybody in DC doesn't want to burn it down at all because they're pretty happy with the status quo. America PAC? I don't even think America PAC, because America PAC's a front for basically the tech bro, expansionist immigration policies that have literally screwed over the Zoomers more than anything. If you wanted to fix the problems in America, like everybody says, prices, but we know that our system's allergic to reducing prices. It can't stand deflation. It would destroy the banking industry. Everybody'd freak out. And there's really no way to even do that. I don't even know how you do that. So what can you do in order to fix that? Well, it's wage stagnation. And who gave us wage stagnation? Well, it wasn't the Democrats. It was the Republican big business interests with globalists and the Club for Growth. And we all know this. That's why the Zoomers are hurting right now. So I don't think they all know this specifically, but they have reasons to be mistrustful of a capitalist system that has completely failed them. If you wanted to fix it overnight, what you could do is just cancel every visa, send them all back. It could be our new national project. Instead of sending people to Mars, we could teach the Zoomers to code. We have the coding boot camps. That's 2.6 million temporary workers, $350 billion of annual economic benefits that would go to domestic workers and not foreign workers, and it would probably create utter chaos. It would spike the cost of wages for business. But you know what? Like, that's where we're at right now. It's, the pie is shrinking and the people are going to lose. And you're looking right now, again, on the issue specifically of Israel, a very big break between the Zoomers and the Boomers. And the Boomers are just punching down at the Zoomers, and the Zoomers are rebelling. And nobody's really winning here. So this is the future, burn it down politics. I think J.D. Vance has presented sort of like, hopefully the best way to trace those, like through those wickets, like thread the needle. But even what he was saying is things that are like, it's reasonable to be a little bit identitarianism. It's reasonable to say we need to stop legal immigration because we've taken too much. And I think even those things are an anathema to basically every single organization that takes money in Washington, D.C. Look at the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation tries to make a move towards MAGA, and they're going after that guy's scalp because of like basically mud splattering from this slugfest that's not helping anybody about a person that they're trying to cancel who represents a movement they want to ignore. So it's a complete mess. And I've been saying this for a long time. They call me a doomer. And here's the election. Like the independents didn't turn out. And the independents, I saw the approval rating. It was negative 27, like, two days ago. And here we are.
Boomers, Zoomers, and we've got Mark Mitchell, the Doomer. But by the way, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I just got to say it because it was interesting. I was getting in an Uber the other day. This guy was saying to me, the driver, he's very involved in like the gig economy. And he said, hey, just so you know, all this AI stuff at the Waymo cars, he goes, they're basically at the water's edge waiting to get unloaded. And those are those driverless cars. He said, so, I mean, the reason I say this, to your point about people's jobs, all the people who are kind of like in the gig economy, this AI stuff, driverless, that's going to start taking away a lot of these other people's jobs who have been getting by through DoorDash and Uber and all that. And so, like, to your point, if you don't start to address this at a macro level and about what's really going on, it's going to happen, to your point, either sooner rather than later, because at some point, it's just going to happen. They're going to release these cars into the cities. All those jobs are going to go away, and people are going to go, where do I go? But let me get back to the question I asked you, Mark. Can this be solved? Is there somebody is it Trump or is it a congressional? Somebody, to your point, has to be the person that says, hey, I heard Mark Mitchell. He's got a point. We got to do something. Who is that?
Yeah, I really don't know. I mean, I know that some of my polling gets to the Trump administration. I'm in the field with economic populist stuff. I gave them economic populist stuff before. Like, this is really the problem, is that everybody's not acknowledging here that capitalism failed. And so when you ask the society, well, do you prefer socialism to capitalism? They still say capitalism by a lot. But then when you say, well, if AI takes away jobs, like, do you support or oppose UBI? And everybody under 40, like, overwhelmingly says, yeah, sure, let's do it. And they perceive, everybody wants economic populism now, but they perceive that the Democrat Party is the party of economic populism, not the Republicans. And you know what? They're right. And so it comes down to the system has failed. Everything's failed. This is the fourth turning. All the institutions are crumbling around us. Like, we literally can't educate children. Our colleges are a joke. They're saddling people with more debt because of predatory lending practices. The military was hollowed out. Thankfully, we're trying to restore some of that. I wonder how far we'll be able to do. Like, literally name everything. I can't send my kids to Boy Scouts. Everything has been corrupted. And history tells us that pendulum swings back, and it's usually a bottom-up like pull, and it's not a top-down push. And I think Donald Trump was kind of like maybe this last gasp of a top-down push, and I guess we didn't push hard enough or whatever. So what's going to happen is just society is going to realign. And right now, unfortunately, I think authenticity matters, and I think the Democrats have figured out a way to run on an authentic platform that sucks but is winning. And that's like this idea that we can all hug and there's enough money for everybody, and it's called democratic socialism. And even the people who voted for Trump under 40 in 2024 were only split on democratic socialism, like 43 to 44. So it's a siren song, and unfortunately traditional conservative values do not enter into it. The Zoomers have already been lost. Like, people say, oh, they need to learn history. Well, you didn't teach it to them, bro. These people don't really care about traditional Western values. They don't really think traditional marriage is all that great. They have a high incidence of mental health problems. I mean, I could just go on. Their dating scene is completely messed up. So many of the young single men have completely given up. The women are like raging feminists that don't want to procreate and have families. It's really, really, really dark. And so no manner of like raging at these people is going to prevent the impending wave of like they are taking over. And again, you're seeing it on Israel. Only 21% of people under 30 support Israel, but it's 59% of people over 65. It's even more of Republicans over 65. And they're literally just trying to throw a temper tantrum. And Mark Levin is getting owned on Twitter by Nick Fuentes, who is now like the rising ascendant star of the right. He's not a guy relegated to an echo chamber anymore. And they can't even acknowledge that this is like a gun held to the Republican Party's head now, that they have no idea what to do with. So again, I really don't know. If I were, I made a recommendation to JD Vance. It's like there probably needs to be a new donor pipeline. There probably needs to be some central structure to replace what MAGA is, because I think MAGA is just whatever comes off the top of Trump's head. Like, he's an intuitive leader, right? But he's, I'm going to make some enemies here, but he's got limited political capital. He's -8 approval rating this week. And that's not horrible, but it should be better. And it doesn't really bode well for 2026. And, people are going to start looking forward to the future. And people supported him maybe back in the spring for a 2028 run more than you would expect. But I think people are going to look for new blood. I mean, we're talking about going up against Zoran Mamdani. And just saying, oh, he's a socialist isn't enough to convince people under 40 that somehow there's this alternative value set that they never really were taught. And they're just expected to buy into him, and yet it's failed them. So maybe there needs to be some centralization. The Republican Party has no plan at all for these quasi blue areas. It doesn't have a platform that these people can run on that actually has courage. But the entire, state and county Republican infrastructure is people who just pragmatically try to win on as little substance as possible. I've talked to these people. And again, Jack ran a good campaign, said a lot of good things, but ultimately, property taxes were a big deal in New Jersey, and yet they still voted for the Democrat. They're all in on this blue state system. And even in the Republican states, the Republicans aren't all in on a new, different version of the future. It's like voters want things like voter ID and paper ballots, and not a single Republican state has done that. Why? What are the Republican states doing as a counterpoint? And the calls are going to be look at Mamdani. We can't let the capitalist banking sector, the capital of the world, fall into the hands of a socialist. Well, what's going to happen is, if Trump gets involved, they're just going to want to resist Trump harder, and they're going to make him even more of a martyr. And the counterpoint, the way to move the Overton window back to the right, is to do as many based things as you can do in Republican states. And I don't feel a lot of pressure out of the state legislatures to do that. There was a really good article about SNAP that came out in The Guardian about this back in March, about how Big Soda was trying to subvert the government in order to keep soda on SNAP. And it's a really good look at how the Republican Influence Network works. And the article just sort of glossed over how easy it was to purchase Washington, D.C. Republicans, barely an inconvenience. They literally just, said, hey, they flexed their checkbook. That was it. But the problem is that, okay, well, now a couple of state legislatures are trying to remove soda from SNAP. That's a problem. That's harder to go after. So they actually enlisted some Republican, consultants, people in the Beltway, lobbyists. Then they found a research organization. They paid them $2 million for polling. They got back polling that says, oh, miraculously, Republicans like the idea of people purchasing soda on SNAP. And I found the exact opposite. So then they run that to the Republican governors, who veto. So we're talking about a Republican policy in a Republican state, a Republican legislature shot down by a Republican governor because a fake Republican poll paid for by Republican big business interests wanted to enrich themselves on the back of the taxpayer. It's freaking corporate welfare. And nobody's calling it out. It's just the way Republicans do business. So that's not going to work. And they have to rapidly purify, because they're going up against a very pure movement. They believe Democrat socialism. They don't know what it is. It's probably going to suck, but they're all in, because they're, quite frankly, I think they're doing it as a tantrum. I think the people voting for Mamdani listen to the way the right talks about him and says, I like that. I like the way that this makes them mad. I think it's a temper tantrum. And, I can't say that we're ready as a country to hug it out with the other side. I mean, the political violence threats are off the charts, the risk of civil war. And it's that's not a status quo thing. And so we don't know what a non-status quo Republican Party looks like, even though we've had 10 years of Trump. And now's the time.
Yeah. Look, I think I'm going to have you back, because as we talk about the shutdown and as we careen into the midterms, I think you're right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we just sweep under the rug. I'm with you on the filibuster. I'm what? It's I'm so tired of the excuses. Well, we can't do this because, or this won't do this. And I'm guys, one of the things that Donald Trump got right is he said, screw it, I'm willing to fight for you. And this establishment view that oh, it'll never work, or the Dems will do, it's then show us you're trying, but we're not connecting the dots right now. Yeah. I appreciate you being with us. We're going to have to keep this conversation going, because there's so much that I think people need to understand where the pulse is. So thanks for being here. We'll follow this up very soon, because I think there's a lot bigger of a conversation that we need to have.
Yeah, appreciate being here. I hope I didn't make your audience go get a drink.
We need to hear. We need to get a dose of reality, and that's the beauty of what you're bringing. And I don't want to get people's hopes up when they should be focused on what we need to do to change things. So thank you.
Great to be here. Thanks so much.
You bet. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.